Audio Jungle.
Good evening to you all. I have great pleasure in welcoming you all to grace the occasion of memorial lecture of Dr. A. Somasundaram Pillai today. Now we move to the lighting the red signal oil lamp. I kindly call upon our Vice Chancellor, Professor S. Sri Satyanarayana, to light the red signal oil lamp. Thank you, sir. Next, I call upon the Dean, Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce to light the additional oil lamp. Thank you, sir. Next, I call upon our guest speaker, Professor Radhirani Yogendra Raja, to light the additional oil lamp. I kindly request our Vice Chancellor, our Dean and our guest speaker to come up with the stage. Vice Chancellor, Dean, Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce, our guest speaker, Professor Yogendra Raja, Deans of the Faculties, Administrative Officers, former Vice Chancellors, retired officers, students and other well-wishers. Again, I am welcoming you to all to this memorial lecture of Dr. A. Somasundaram Pillai today. Now, I call upon our Vice Chancellor, Professor S. Sri Satyanarayana, to deliver the memorial lecture introductory speech.
ஆலம் தானுகந்து அமர் செய்தானே ஆகியே அமரத் தொழுதேத்தும் சீலந்தான் பெருமுடியானே சிந்திப்பவர் தம் சிந்தையுள்ளானே இளவார் குரலாரும் இறங்கு என்று மேற்று வழிபடுத்திக்க காலகானனை கம்பனம் மாலை காணக்கன் அடியும் பெற்றவார். So we attributes the Lord with the time. Time is the greatest influence of the nature Almighty on the human beings. So in this respect, in the 1920s, yesterday we had a commemoration of Kailasanath Kurukal. He born in 1921. He had his education in India, doctorate from Pune. Today we are having another man. He born in 1926. Arunachalam Somasundaram Pillai. Another white and white man. Kurukal also white and white. Somasundaram Pillai is white and white, no one knows. Maybe I am the last one to see the glimpse of them. Of course, Professor Balasundaram Pillai is the one who has been sharing with him the council for 12 years. So this white man come from Vadamarachi Tumnale. And I would say, I don't see any two brothers have a commemoration lecture from the University of Jaffna, commemorated by the memorial lecture. One is Somasundaram Pillai. Another one is Arunachalam Somasundaram Pillai. Other one is Arunachalam Somasundaram. So one lecture is conducted by Faculty of Management. Other lecture conducted by the pediatrician, famous pediatrician. He was cold blood disappearance from the IPKF in the hospital. So Surendra Kumar and all their team commemorate him. So he hails from a very respected family. And the family is famous for sacrifice. That's what they said, Alam Tanavanda Sedan. If you want to serve other people, then the service and sacrifice goes together. So Somasundaram Pillai, 1920, dedicated, elites. They had the education in India, Presidency College, Madras. So our universities came in the 50s, 60s. So they had to go abroad. Even Ramanathan people, they born earlier in the 19th century, 18 odd, they had to go to London for their English education. So Somasundaram Pillai was a student from Velagami school where the teacher, father took him, and then he was at the Hartley College where he was too young to go to university. So he went to Presidency College, Madras, and get qualified in BA, and then he continued to develop his interest in the financial sector. So he worked in Colombo for a while, and then he moved to Jaffna, Mercantile Financial Limited. So where he had his own audit and taxation work on his own. So he was an example for self-employment. He was an elite scholar. Professor Balasundaram witnessed him, his English law, accounting. He was a qualified chartered accountant. Our people go to chartered accountants who want to end up with some companies. After getting the licensure done, company experience done, he had a passion for people. Till his last minute, he lived here. And his daughter is a United Nations permanent employee, resided in Delhi. I'll read some of the, I was digging some materials about him before coming here. So I saw a couple of documents. One is Professor Turraja's address on commemoration. Another one, Professor Balasundaram Pillai's as a dean message. And also one of the message from her daughter. She was writing to our institute to have this commemoration arrangement done. She was writing to our Vice Chancellor, Professor Sandolingam at the time. My name is Nalaini. I am the eldest daughter of Somasundaram Pillai, a chartered accountant. My father has served as a member of the University Council for over 15 years and had attended more than 100 meetings. He was also a part-time lecturer at the Jaffna University lecturing in auditing. He published a book called Sri Lankan Fisheries and Animal Husbandry. Has been used as a textbook in many universities. In 2005, he was awarded a doctorate honorary causa by the University of Jaffna. Till his last breath, he loved his Tamil land and Jaffna people as his own family. We, his children, are very thankful to the Jaffna University for recognizing his service during the time. I would like his service to continue even after lifetime, after death, in the form of memorial lecture. So you understand, you are here to honor him and commemorate this man with us in the governing body for 15 years, one of the most respected and very ardent contributor to the council proceedings. So ladies and gentlemen, yesterday was a Kurukal, today was a financial mathematics man, tomorrow a Tamil scholar, language man. Then 5th of December we will have a celebration for a surgeon, Ganesh Ratna. So don't you think it's a blessing for us to get these opportunities done in this place? Or we are just coming because Radharani is there? Don't you think it's an opportunity for us to commemorate these people and top people coming, and this man, former Vice Chancellor, don't miss, because the participation brings progress. This has been the case. So our university is now celebrating all kind of activities. One of the commemorative lectures, Professor Mathias lecture coming. Our organ is organizing as a commemoration. Now the Catholics also identified November as a commemoration. Our Tamil Dukes has been commemorating in November. It happened to be Satyanarayana was from my village anyway, the first the Kada who died in November 23rd or 21. He's from my physics teacher's son, Satyanarayana, from Kambarmali. Anyway, so these guys had education in, because those time we had to go abroad for education. Somasundaram Pillai had this. Then what is Professor, our excellent Professor Thurraiya was, when was given a farewell in the 1994, I think, at the time, we were looking for somebody to honor him, the award. So no one could go above Professor Thurraiya to honor him. Then we found Professor Dr. Somasundaram Pillai, because he was his teacher at the Hartley College. And today at the Jaffna, the Sri Lankan Tennis Association people visited me and about the prospect of developing tennis. Even at the time we had a tennis court in Hartley College. He was the one active person always occupied with this tennis court, Somasundaram Pillai. So Professor Thurraiya quote, I consider it as an honor to privilege to be invited to deliver Arunachalam Somasundaram Pillai, Chartered Accountant and former member of Governing Council of the University of Jaffna. Late Somasundaram Pillai had his primary education in Tattadaru Methodist Mission School in Tunnale and his secondary education in Puloli Velayama School, and his father was a teacher at Hartley College, Coimbatore, where he had his secondary certificate examination in 1943. At the time he was too young to sit for the university entrance examination. He proceeded to India, St. Joseph's College at Tiruchirappalli, where he excelled his studies and won gold medal for his performance at the Reverend Honorable Srinivasa Sastry Gold Medal Oratorial Contest. He also secured Subbarao Prize for Economics. Having successfully completed his college studies, he graduated from University of Madras in 1947. Late Dr. Somasundaram Pillai belonged to a family of learned persons and professionals. His younger brother was an engineer by profession. Another brother was a pediatrician consultant. His sister Mrs. Tyagaraja was alumnus of Madras Presidency College and graduated from Madras University, specialized in Tamil. Later he obtained a PhD Tamil from University of London and served, we don't know her actually, Mrs. Tyagaraja, and she served in Kelaniya University and Colombo Universities. So this has been his family background. After graduating from Madras University, Somasundaram Pillai joined Hartley College as a teacher in 1948. That was time most of the people came to know him. Being a keen tennis player, he was often seen at the Hartley College tennis court. He left Hartley College in 1954. He was destined to be a great achievement. He was destined for great achievement and decided to follow a professional accountancy course in Colombo. After successfully passing the chartered accountant, he worked as the chief accountant in Ceylon Printers Limited. He did not work in Colombo long and was compelled to look for other venues to practice his profession. He set up his own office in Jaffna and practiced as a tax audit consultant and managed Merchant Finance Limited, which was largely his creation, as managing director. He also served as a visiting lecturer in auditing the commerce and economics and so on and so forth. So wonderful young people hear about Somasundaram Pillai and Vimalanath as another accountant coming from same area than Subramanian with the finance. So we could actually tell you youngsters about this man, because hearing only this is the purpose of dissemination of knowledge. We never knew we had such a so wonderful man among us while he was living. So now let me say something about our lady today, oration, financial health, financial management. I was so impressed her humble origin because she started a career from technical college, distance learning. She was 1 year junior to me. I was wondering what is happening for her till 1989. Then I checked it and I found she commenced her education in the distance learning. Radhanan. So postgraduate diploma in distance education as a qualification first he got. Now she's a director of our open distance learning. So this was started when you were young in 80s, right? 70s. Then she had Indira Gandhi National Open University, Delhi, where she did this postgraduate diploma in distance education. Then qualification 2, she did the higher national diploma part-time accountancy, Technical College Jaffna. So just imagine how humble origin. Our people start from high and stagnated. She start from Technical College, end up with a professor in financial management and a director of CODL. And today she has been chosen to deliver this address. And qualification 3, then full-time HNDC, Technical College Jaffna. Then she did first degree 89 from University of Jaffna, Bachelor of Commerce Honours with the first class, and ended up with a PhD from HTC. She's an example, living testimony for continuing education. Our people will stop with MBAs, but she did PhD at the age of, I don't know, in 2011, I don't want to call the age, but from University of Kelaniya, under the former Vice Chancellor of the Kelaniya University, and my friend, what's his name, sir? What's your supervisor's name? Sharma Singh is a former Vice Chancellor of Kelaniya. So it's wonderful that she has decorated so many awards and accolades in her career. So she served as a visiting lecturer in several institutions. I don't want to call about her achievement in this university. The Open University, Technical College, Self-Finance Diplomas and so on and so forth. She extensively extended her service to our national testing service of the country. She has published more research papers and books, and also I'm very proud I was the convener of the JUICE 2012 Made in Conference, where he served as the chief editorial member of the conference on that JUICE, an associate editor, and in the ICCM 6 she worked very hard. Then she got the best paper award for challenge facing women in accessing microcredit and microfinance. She further supervised several undergrads and M2 MPhils and MBA students and PhD theses at the University of Kelaniya. So she was served as a chairperson in international and national conference. She has been serving as a translator of the examining division and accreditation of the Chartered Institute of Sri Lanka. She served as a coordinator capacity development of women entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka and India. Further, she monitored and mentors women entrepreneurs. It's a wonderful page decorated with the completion of this introduction to the speaker. So I think she's well known to us, so I don't want to take more time. So really, we put a seat there. That means I go to Sivatondan. We put the seat only this particular day. The Sivatondan, the permanent seat is there with the yellow cloth, so that every day they expect Chelatra Swami come and sit there. If you go to Hare Krishna, not only they put the seat, not only they put the cloth, they put the fan also. Because it's warm. So they get sweat. So the subtle presence, we don't know. We laugh. Even dog knows. We don't know. So I think today the presence of our Dr. Arunachalam Somasundaram is a so glamorous person. I only watched him. 2 people I saw smoking in the boardroom. One is Professor Vidyanand with the Chukan. Other one, our Somasundaram. We had to keep the ashtray there. So active contributor. The 60 people were like that. I fondly remember. And thank you very much for all those who are coming here and witnessing the proceedings and glorifying the mother university as we relish commemorating the contribution of Dr. Arunachalam Somasundaram Pillai. And you know, the 20s, 30s people, as I told you, they went Thiruvadalodiyum, Thiruviyum, Kalvi, Thirudi Kondangala Tanda, Ramana, and Kailasa, Kuruka, and these people, not the University of Ceylon product. I think Professor Balasundaram Pillai people are Ceylon product, because they were the first one to get our indigenous setup. So it's wonderful that you have come here and witnessing. So it's, digging our root, then we know, set up our path, give a foundation for us to grow. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, sir, for your wonderful introduction. This memorial lecture already scheduled to be held on in 2021. Unfortunately, it was unable to hold. Once again, it was rescheduled to be held on 28 April 2022. However, today is the good day and good time. We are going to deliver this memorial lecture. Good evening to all. The respected Vice Chancellor, Deans of the faculties, Heads of the departments, Professors, distinguished guests, students and colleagues. I welcome to all to this memorial lecture of Dr. A. Somasundaram Pillai, 2022. It's an honor and privilege to be invited to deliver memorial lecture in honor of Dr. Arunachalam Somasundaram Pillai. Dr. Arunachalam Somasundaram Pillai was a chartered accountant and a former member of the governing council of the University of Jaffna. His native place was Tunnalai, where he married Leela Kulaveerasingham, and he established his own audit firm under the name of Merchant Finance Company in Jaffna. The late Dr. Arunachalam Somasundaram Pillai received his primary education at Tatadaru Methodist Mission School and his secondary education at Ploli Velavidam School, later Velavidam Madhya Mahavidyalaya, and at Hardley College, Coimbatore. His father was a teacher at Velavidam Madhya Mahavidyalayam. He went to India St. Joseph's College in Tiruchirappalli after his senior school certificate examinations, where he outshined in his studies and won the gold medal for his extraordinary performance at the Right Honorable Srinivasa Sastry Gold Medal Oratorical Contest. In addition, he was awarded the Subba Rao Prize for Economics. He graduated from Madras University after successfully completing his collegiate education in 1947. After graduation from Madras University in 1948, Dr. Somasundaram Pillai joined as a teacher at Hardley College, where he was a keen tennis player. On many occasions, he addressed the college assembly. In 1954, he left from Hardley College and he enrolled in a professional accounting course in Colombo. He served as a chief accountant at Ceylon Printers Limited after successfully completed his chartered accountancy. He established his own office in Jaffna and worked as a tax and audit consultant, while also serving as the managing director of Merchant Finance Limited. For many years, he was a visiting lecturer in auditing at Commerce Department, University of Jaffna. During this period, he was elected as a member of the University Governing Council. He has a unique track record in this area, having served for nearly 2 decades. During the tenures of Vice Chancellor Prof. S. Vidyanandan, Prof. A. Thurraja and Prof. B. Balasundaram Pillai, he served as a member of the council. As a member of the council, He provided exceptional services as advisor, mentor and critic. His expert advice and suggestions were particularly sought in matters relating to accountancy and finance because he was an expert in accountancy. Further, he was a justice man. He never compromised on what he believed was right. This was practiced by him during his membership of the council. Dr. Somasundaram Pillai was the chartered president in the Lions Club of Coimbatore and the chairman of Lions Club International Zone. He was also a supporter of a variety of social trusts and humanitarian organizations. He donated a significant portion of his money to such worthwhile initiatives. Further, Dr. Somasundaram Pillai authored 2 books, The Fisheries and the Animal Husbandry, Ilangai Meen Valamum Payan Palam and Sri Lanka Fisheries Exploitation and Development were released in 2000 and 2001 respectively. His books Animal Husbandry in Tamil areas of Sri Lanka and Ilangai Tamil Pradesangalil Kalnadai Abhiviruthi were published in Tamil and English respectively. The degree of Doctor of Philosophy honoris causa was awarded by the University of Jaffna to him as an appreciation of his many achievements in his profession and his commitment to university administration in 2004. He contributed a lot of accounting and finance as a teacher, chartered accountant and council member of the university. He provided employment opportunities for the accounting and finance students in his firm and as a visiting lecturer delivered lectures to the same discipline students. As a result, I believe this topic of today's presentation would have piqued his curiosity. It gives me a great pleasure to offer the presentation in his honor. The abstract of this memorial lecture: the role of financial literacy in achieving women's financial inclusion and the strategies to improve financial inclusion among women. Abstract: the aim of this study is to investigate the influence of financial literacy on financial inclusion of poor women. Women have lack of access to formal financial institutions but mostly have access to informal institutions such as microfinance institutions, unregistered and unregulatory institutions, etc. Sri Lanka has a high level of financial inclusion compared to other South Asian countries. It has a wide range of financial institutions that provide loans, savings, pawning, leasing and finance and remittance and money transfer facilities, and a large number of households in Sri Lanka access multiple financial institutions for their savings and credit needs. However, the usage of insurance services, e-payments, ATM facilities and mobile banking is very low. Most of the researchers reveal that financial literacy is important to achieve a high level of financial inclusion in any country, particularly in developing countries. This study explains the importance of financial literacy to improve financial inclusion among poor women in developing countries through the literature of previous studies. Further, it explains the challenges faced by women in accessing financial inclusion and suggested some strategies to improve financial inclusion in developing countries through empirical evidences. The study will be helpful to the policymakers, financial institutions, particularly related to cost and quality of financial services provided and the sustainability of financial institutions. The study comprises the introduction of financial inclusion, financial strategy, financial inclusion, financial strategy, the role of financial literacy on financial inclusion among women. So the introduction, the growth and sustainability depends on economic activities of the country. The demand and supply and availability of financial resources lead to growth of an economy in the country. The Financial inclusion plays a vital role of an economy in the range of banking and financial system. Financial inclusion was introduced in 1990s to distinguish the obstruction of access to financial products and services in financial institutions. However, the term evolved in early 2000s as a result of the pursuit of reasons for financial exclusion. Financial inclusion has become a regular term in the social policy of the countries at different stages of development. The definition: the financial inclusion is defined as access to and usage of appropriate financial products and services by individuals and enterprises. This is given by World Bank 2018. The financial inclusion is the delivery of financial services at an affordable cost to disadvantaged and low-income people. Growth of emerging markets and developing economies in 2018, it was 3.1%, and in 2019 it was declined as 2.1%. Further, it emphasizes financial inclusion as a significant policy area that can uphold the growth of the country, reducing poverty and improves resilience to shock. There is a great variation in financial inclusion. In European countries, most adults have their own accounts, but in developing countries, significant development in account ownership, which has increased from 45 to 65% since 2011. However, 30% of unbanked adults stated trust in banks as a barrier, which is double in the developing countries. Further, in developing countries, the gender difference in account ownership is large. Financial inclusion is considered as a major tool to help the people to invest their money for future purpose, manage financial shocks and consumption in the household, and the poverty and the inequality could be reduced by its contribution. It helps savings mobilization and supports using various kinds of financial products. As a result of this, low and high income people can participate in the formal financial system and contribute to the formal economy. Financial inclusion promotes the mobilization of savings and use of a variety of financial products to ensure that funds are circulated throughout the economy. Almost universally, financial inclusion validates the ease which people may access, use and benefit from the official financial system and products. Financial inclusion is defined as a provision of financial services at a cheap cost to a large segment of society's disadvantaged and low income groups, with the goal of providing them with the financial cushion to support their survival as well as their entrepreneurial activities. Banking services, credit, insurance, savings and assets, money guidance and financial literacy and capacity are all included under this financial inclusion. An all-inclusive financial system allows for more efficient allocation of productive resources, potentially lowering capital cost. Then financial literacy. In 21st century, the ability to deal with money and financial concern is vital for financial professionals and for individual persons for managing their finances in their day-to-day life. This capability is referred to financial literacy. The financial literacy is important for a number of reasons, that is demographic, social and economic trends is affecting the baby boom generation, including increases in life expectancy, changes in pension arrangements and income, growing involvement in financial markets and the complexity of financial products. According to Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the financial literacy is defined as a combination of awareness, knowledge, skill, attitude and behavior necessary to make sound financial decisions based on economic and personal circumstances to enhance individual financial well-being. So this financial literacy consists of this knowledge, skill, attitudes. So what is knowledge? Knowledge is understanding of personal financial issues. Skills are being able to apply that knowledge to manage individuals' personal finances, and attitudes and behavior is established beliefs, feelings, confidence and biases during specific situations related to handling one's personal finance. Financial literacy presents basic skills related to earning, spending, budgeting, borrowing, saving and using other financial services. In addition, it helps women to attain better business results, better inclusion. In recent years, it is one of the important features of economic development in the countries. A country that increases the level of financial literacy will contribute to banking. Further, the banking sector is dynamic and as a consequence, the economy will revolutionize. From these banks have a great task to extend alternatives that support the majority of the population using their services, not only the quality of services but also the interest charged for their loans. It has become of vital importance for the development of public policies and important tool to achieve the financial inclusion in the country. A wide range of financial literacy initiatives exist in the field to support financial inclusion. Financial inclusion and financial literacy. Financial inclusion protects people from fake lenders that charge very high interest rates and engage in unethical collection techniques. The formal system makes it possible to save in a secure and safe manner. A formal bank account can grant access to a variety of financial services, overdrafts, debit cards and credit cards. Bank account is required for insurance and retirement. This inclusive financial system boosts communal efficiency and well-being. As a result, government strategies have centered on ensuring that quality with children and adolescents continues to increase, even though financial literacy is now regarded as a critical axis in the formation of people. Study and transmission dates back only a few years. Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development published the first financial literacy studies in its member countries in 2005. Financial literacy is a key to financial inclusion. Financial inclusion and financial literacy contends that financial literacy is a myth, because by implementing financial literacy is a sound decision, the effects have failed to significantly improve the behavior of financial system users as expected by its proponents. It is important to everyone, and financial inclusion depends on financial literacy. When people have a better understanding of finances, they can make better financial decisions, commit less debt and establish credit. Adults who reported a high level of financial literacy were more likely to report that their life was financially stable and secure. For children, financial education is important because it provides them with a foundation for budgeting and saving money. It is crucial to enhance financial education and an affirmative financial culture in people, as it is necessary to make sure a population educated in finance that is competent of making informed decisions, according to UNICEF 2013. Then mostly financial inclusion is emphasized as a progression of incorporating financial services into daily economic activities of the population to economic growth to the extent that it can successfully reduce financing cost, insurance and resource management both for individuals and organizations. Financial inclusion is a global policy. Priority and demand side initiatives including financial literacy have a significant role to play in helping individuals to access and use appropriate formal financial products. The study provides an outline of major issues on financial inclusion, mainly women's access to financial goods and services. It includes examples, experiences, lessons and good practices and a variety of financial stakeholders from the previous literatures. It focuses the role of financial literacy in achieving women's financial inclusion in Sri Lanka and find out the strategies to improve financial inclusion among women from the past experience. According to World Bank 2015, about 38%, more than 2 billion adults in world population do not use financial services through formal institutions due to high expenses of using them, long displacements and the lengthy procedures to a bank account in the formal institutions. The financial inclusion has two aspects of financial inclusion, that is financial literacy and financial inclusion, that is called as demand side and supply side. Under the demand side, we can see financial literacy and credit counseling centers, credit absorption, etc. And under the financial inclusion, the supply side, that is financial market, banks, services, appropriate design of products and services. The significance of financial inclusion: individuals who are poor, particularly women, are financially excluded than men. Over 50% of world's adult population, around 2 billion working groups, do not have formal bank account. Financial inclusion ensures that regardless of income level, all households and businesses have access to the financial services to improve their lives. Currently, the world's poor live and work in the informal economy. Even though they have limited financial resources, they save, borrow and manage their day-to-day expenses. They have to rely on informal means of handling money. This could include relatives, friends, cash on hand, pawn trade, brokers and money lenders, among others. These options are not always enough and they are dangerous, expensive and indecisive. The formal financial system is beneficial in the following ways: make day-to-day transactions, safeguard savings will help households to manage cash flow, smooth spending and manage working capital. Financing small businesses, it will help invest in assets and develop their businesses. It helps to plan for recurring expenses such as school fees, rent, electricity, etc. It mitigates shocks and manage expenses on unforeseen events, that is medical situations, death of family member, robbery or natural disaster, and develop their welfare. The financial inclusion has tremendous benefits not only for people but also for economies. It links to a country's economy and social growth and it helps to alleviate poverty. According to recent research, financial inclusion not only has a good relationship with growth and employment but also has a causal effect on growth. Poor individuals and small and micro entrepreneurs in the country benefit from financial inclusion in a variety of ways. Beginners, it facilitates economic dealings for the majority of new economic agents. Furthermore, it enables disadvantaged families with tiny, fluctuating and sometimes seasonal earnings to effectively manage their resources. Families use financial services to improve their access to education, health and other necessities that improve their quality of life. Poor families who are more vulnerable can protect themselves by using finances, credit and insurance, remittances with long-term and low-cost management methods. Entrepreneurs can use loans or savings to increase production by investing in product assets. Through financial leveraging, the correct financial infrastructure may help the underprivileged recognize their wealth. Financial services foster liberty and economic resilience by enabling people to actively participate in their communities and countries. According to Beck and Honorman found that increased access to finance is not only pro-growth but also pro-poor, lowering income disparity and poverty. Financial inclusion for women occurs when they have effective access to a variety of financial services. It satisfies their business and household demands and is accessible to the social and cultural elements that cause financial exclusion in both men and women to manifest in diverse ways. It refers to the provision of financial services to all people in an open, transparent and cost-effective manner. Low-income households lack access to bank accounts, forcing them to spend more time and money on bank visits. More than 1 billion women are excluded from formal financial services. Women's financial inclusion has materialized as a preference among financial inclusion policymakers, implementers, global organizations, and financial service suppliers. Financial inclusion and women. Financial inclusion handled correctly can increase women's empowerment in the following ways. It can be accessed on their own account that helps them to receive not only women's bargaining power within the family, but also it will influence how money and other resources are utilized. It can help to increase for earning income or control over assets outside of the household. It can reduce vulnerability to assure against risk to meet unexpected expenses by allowing women. These are important aspects of economic empowerment and they can also assist women in achieving their goals. The majority of research confirm the effects of financial inclusion on various categories of women and data suggests that various financial inclusion plans can have considerable implications on women's economic empowerment. Globally, women have low number of economic opportunities than men. Only around 50% of all eligible women participate in employability training compared to 75% of men. In addition, women work in the informal sector and in low-wage jobs. They don't have the same level of access to financial services as men. Women account for 56% of those without a bank account, or roughly 1 billion women. Bank accounts do not require asset control or money, but they will serve as a starting point for financial inclusion. Around 40% of women are small farm managers, of whom only 1% receive agricultural finance in Kenya. Further, in Bangladesh, women create 27% of savings in banks but obtain 1.8% of credit. There are 3.5 million female small entrepreneurs compared to 2.5 million males in South Africa. That only 43% of female small entrepreneurs have a bank account compared to 50% of males. The majority of studies reveal the impact of financial inclusion programs on women. It also implies that financial inclusion programs have major impact on economic empowerment of women. However, there are other obstacles that cannot be overcome through the financial inclusion programs. The reasons for targeting women with financial inclusion. Recent studies reveal that women perform worse than men on numerous variables that influence them to poverty. Women between the ages of 20 to 34 are more likely than men to be impoverished, according to a poll performed by UN Women and the World Bank. Divorce, separation, and widowhood have a greater impact on women than on men. Divorced women in the age group of 18 to 49 are more than twice as likely as divorced men to be poor. Women are held back on both fronts by gender relations, even though economic inclusion can lead to financial inclusion and vice versa. The commercial banks, which focus on men and formal enterprises, neglect women, who make up a significant and growing portion of the informal economy. Many microfinance institutions have answered to the challenge, focusing on women, but much more has to be done to change the status from formalizing. Microfinance institutions providing women with financial education. Further data proves that women spend a larger percentage of income on household consumption than men. Financial inclusion for women can benefit families, communities, and society as a whole. Women experience discrimination and are disproportionately susceptible in many societies. Inequality in gender roles has ramifications for the most fundamental components of self-determination, dignity, and freedom, all of which influence financial inclusion. On the other hand, gender dynamics can and do shift with time. The financial services business can act as a driver for gender equality as well as barometer. Financial inclusion will not bring about gender equality on its own. Women can only achieve social and economic empowerment if they have equal access to the whole spectrum of needs-based financial services, that is savings, credit, insurance and payments, as well as financial education. Financial inclusion gives skills to accumulate assets and generate money, whether they are working at home or outside the home, whether they are employed or self-employed. According to the World Bank's 2012 Global Index survey, over 3/4 of the 2.5 billion individuals living on less than $2 per day do not have a bank account. Women and people who live in rural areas who suffer the most from financial isolation. So the financial literacy will help to reduce poverty among women. The role of financial literacy on financial inclusion. The financial literacy is critical for improving the community's financial awareness. Financial literacy, financial eligibility, supportive regulations, facilitating intermediation and extending distribution channels are some of the instruments used to promote financial inclusion. Financial literacy, which includes a thorough understanding of financial institutions, financial products and services, and financial management in order to achieve a better standard of living in the future. It's a concerted endeavor to alter public behavior. As a result, financial literacy is more than 5 years long-term initiative. People in industrialized and advanced economies as well as those in emerging and developing economies are affected by a lack of financial literacy. Consumers in advanced economies also show a lack of understanding of financial principles that might help them better comprehend and negotiate the financial landscape, manage financial risk and avoid financial hazards. People in countries all across the world, from Korea to Australia to Germany, do not understand basic financial concepts. Although financial literacy varies by education and income, evidence suggests that highly educated customers with high incomes might be as inexperienced about financial matters as less educated, lower income consumers. Financial decision making and education are also seen as complex and anxiety-inducing by consumers. Financial literacy is a critical skill for assisting customers in accepting and utilizing the financial goods to which they are increasingly exposed, because it could be made it easier to operate product effectively. As a result, financial literacy is essential for financial inclusion for the reasons listed below. It can assist clients in developing the skills to assess and choose the best products for their desires, as well as empowering them to exercise their consumer protection rights and obligations. When properly developed, financial education is customized to the client's unique circumstances, assisting them in understanding how formal and informal financial instruments can handle their daily financial issues, ranging from the whims of daily cash flow to risk management. Its strength comes from its ability to be relevant to everybody, from the person considering moving funds from beneath the mattress to a community savings organization. It bridges gap between the informal and formal financial sectors, facilitating clients access to and more significantly use a wide range of financial services. Although financial inclusion is a big goal, financial literacy is the first step toward reaching it. The demand side of financial inclusion can be understood as financial literacy. It is regarded as a critical component in achieving financial inclusion, development and eventually financial stability. It has grown in relevance in recent years, particularly since 2002, as financial markets have become increasingly complex, making it difficult for the average person to make informed decisions. There are risks associated with financial inclusion. Recent microfinance experiences have revealed that poor people take out loans that they are unable to repay. Farmers have also taken out debts that they are unable to pay back. Many people have committed suicide as a result of financial difficulties. Financial literacy provides the ability to make well-informed decisions and make successful decisions to the usage and management of money. It is recognized as a necessary condition for effective functioning in modern society. It enables one to comprehend the significance of conserving. Not only can financial literacy improve people's quality of life, but it can also improve the integrity and quality of markets. It can give individuals with basic budgeting skills, assist them in developing savings discipline, and therefore ensure that they can live a dignified life after retirement. Financial literacy is even more important in Sri Lanka, Given the low levels of literacy and the vast percentage of the population that remains outside of the formal financial system, particularly in rural areas. Unfortunately, even graduates in Sri Lanka are not well versed in financial matters. To achieve inclusive economic improvement and poverty reduction, increasing access to and use of high quality financial products and services is critical. People who participate in the financial system are better equipped to manage risk, start or invest in a business, and make huge expenditures such as schooling or house improvements according to researchers. Women are disproportionately affected by poverty, which stems from unequal work divisions and a lack of control over economic resources. Increasing women's financial involvement is especially crucial. Many women are still reliant on their husbands, with 1 in every 3 married women in developing nations have no control over purchases. 1 out of every 10 people is not consulted about how their own money is spent. Furthermore, women often have fewer opportunities for educational attainment outside of the household employment, asset and land ownership, asset inheritance, and control over their financial destinies. It is vital to both women's empowerment and poverty reduction to provide low-income women around the world with effective and inexpensive financial instruments to save and borrow money, make and receive payments, and manage risk. The construction of a more gender-inclusive financial system that addresses the specific demand side and supply side hurdles experienced by women supported by an inclusive regulatory environment is necessary for greater women's financial inclusion. These obstacles might range from something as simple as a lack of assets for collateral to more systematic limits that penalize women, like as account opening regulations. Financial inclusion in Sri Lanka. Financial inclusion is a key tool to inclusive growth because it enables people to save for the future, handle financial shocks, and smooth household spending, all of which contribute to poverty. It's a method by which people of all income levels can be included into the formal financial system and therefore contribute to the formal economy. Financial inclusion allows firms to make important investments and gain access to funding. Therefore, access and usage of formal financial system contributes to inclusive growth from numerous angles. In comparison to other South Asian countries, Sri Lanka has a high level of financial inclusion. Its financial industry includes a diverse spectrum of financial institutions that offer loans, savings, pawning, leasing and finance, as well as remittance and money transfer services. There is evidence that greater proportion of Sri Lankan households use numerous financial institutions to meet their financial needs. However, the digital services such as insurance, ATMs, e-payments and mobile banking are all used rarely. In Sri Lanka, the rate of information technology literacy is only 35% in 2014, but in 2021 survey it was increased as 57.9%. And with the expanding IT finance needs, financial knowledge and education are becoming increasingly vital. However, there is a gender gap between male and female was 5.9%, female 55.2% and male 61.1%. In order to improve financial inclusion in Sri Lanka, the regulatory structure controlling the microfinance sector must be strengthened as well as consumer safety. There is still a lot of room to improve financial inclusion, especially in terms of the cost and quality of financial services supplied as well as the long-term viability of financial institutions. According to the Global Financial Literacy Survey 2018, Sri Lanka has 35% financial literacy, while only 33% worldwide are financially educated. According to the International Finance Corporation, financial inclusion is critical for long-term economic growth. According to the World Bank Group's Global Findex for 2017, about 74% of Sri Lanka's population has a bank account, which is higher than the regional average of 70% in South Asia. Sri Lanka also has a higher bank branch penetration rate with 16.5 bank branches per 100,000 adults as of December 2018. Financial inclusion in Sri Lanka is not adequate despite the fact that 83% of all Sri Lankans have bank accounts and over 80% of women have saving accounts. Sri Lanka realized this and began working to enhance financial inclusion. The financial system, which includes financial intermediaries and financial markets, channels funds from savers to those who can put them to better use. The central bank licensed commercial bank, licensed specialized bank, finance companies, leasing companies, primary depository services, pension and provident funds, insurance companies, rural banks, stock brokers, securities market intermediaries, unit trusts, thrift credit cooperative societies make up Sri Lanka's financial system. The provision of financial services to low-income persons is known as microfinance. The definition of microfinance, which has its roots in microcredit, has expanded in recent decades. Small amount of microcredit can assist poor people in the informal sector engage in productive activities and help to bring them out of poverty. Microcredit's early success revealed that disadvantaged families in the informal economy are desirable consumers who can be served in large numbers in a sustainable manner. We realized over the last few decades that poor households require a broad range of financial services to produce revenue, accumulate assets, smooth usage and manage risk services that a microcredit cannot deliver. The word microfinance now refers to a wide range of financial services targeted to the needs of low-income people. These broader demands are recognized in the global financial inclusion agenda. It also recognizes the value of financial literacy, the development of customer financial capacities, and customer protection measures that take into account the condition and limits faced by poor people in the informal economy. In many developing countries, women are disproportionately affected by poverty. Sri Lanka, as a developing country, has been affected by an internal war for the past 30 years. Currently, post-war development is taking place in the country's northern and eastern provinces, but war widows, disabled people and female children are having difficulties in accessing education, nourishment and employment. Microfinance is made available to these people by NGOs, financial institutions and other government organizations in order to empower them. Microfinance and financial inclusion. Microfinance has a long history in South Asia. Many South Asian countries have had credit cooperatives since the early 20th century. The current microfinance movement, on the other hand, began in the 1970s. In the 1990s, Bangladesh saw a fast increase in the number of microfinance institutions and their consumers, followed by India in 2000s. In Sri Lanka, the microfinance business grew rapidly in the 1980s and 1990s, and it continued to expand after the tsunami from 2004. Other countries in the region had a more difficult time getting started, but today have strong microfinance sectors. Microfinance reach differs greatly throughout South Asian countries at the moment. Sri Lanka and Bangladesh have a high level of outreach, whereas India and Nepal have a medium level and Pakistan and Afghanistan have a low level. This is financial sector under formal, semi-formal and informal in Sri Lanka. In Bangladesh, a few specialized microfinance institutions such as Grameen Bank and the Bangladesh Rural Advancement Committee were responsible for the high exposure of microfinance, whereas in India, Self-Help Group program was responsible for the growth of the microfinance. The cooperative societies and government-led microfinance programs in Sri Lanka are largely responsible for the country's strong microfinance outreach. And also the SAP program also. Microfinance is the most popular and well-studied type of financial inclusion program. Several studies have indicated that they can improve women empowerment, albeit this is dependent on how well these are designed and administered. Recent studies in South Africa and India have found that microfinance programs can affect both women's economic conditions and empowerment metrics. Similar findings have been obtained in other evaluations. Some microcredit initiatives, on the other hand, have minimal influence on women's economic empowerment. Because the prevalent discrimination against women's economic activity was too pervasive in some circumstances. In certain circumstances, the scheme itself had flaws such as loans that were too little to improve women's opportunities, terms of small loan repayment that did not permit for long-term wealth creation investment or high interest rates. Rather than empowering women, such elements might lead to over-indebtedness and make them more vulnerable. Women like men may lack the entrepreneurial skills necessary to generate value from a micro loan, and the ultra poor may be unable to obtain microcredit due to their incapability to make even minimum loan repayments. Financial inclusion strategies. The strategies for financial inclusion can be developed under the titles of policy target, product and policy. The low income poor, working poor, micro and small enterprise, special needs of migrant workers or remote areas, and for non-poor could be included under the title of policy target. The savings, credit, insurance, transfer facilities and mixed products can be produced under the strategy of product. Further, the financial eligibility, financial education, facilitating intermediation, supporting regulation and distribution channel can be developed under the title of policy. National financial inclusion strategies have added a vast agreement of GRIP in recent years and are becoming an increasingly common mechanism around the world used to help people out of poverty. Sri Lanka joined the likes of Russia and South Africa by introducing its own National Financial Inclusion Strategy for 2021 to 2024, March 4, 2021, with the aim of making financial services more reachable, efficient and affordable for all people and business in the country. The central bank has launched the country's first national financial inclusion strategy with the goal of improving financial access for all Sri Lankans. Financial inclusion or providing everyone with access to a country's financial system can only be effective if people are aware of the risk they are incurring and have the ability to use the financial system strategically. Low financial literacy is the root of many problems in Sri Lanka, including high levels of debt. National Financial Inclusion Strategy. The financial literacy must be introduced into Sri Lanka's education system, with personal finance management becoming a necessary part of the school curriculum in addition to wide-ranging awareness activities. Short modules can be included into vocational education, local language, media and other entrepreneurial endeavors. Everyone cannot be genuinely empowered without financial inclusion and financial literacy. The first National Financial Inclusion Strategy in Sri Lanka was released on March 4, 2021 with the goal of making financial services more accessible, efficient and inexpensive to all households and enterprises in the country. The National Financial Inclusion Strategy is a collaborative project coordinated by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka with technical and financial support from International Finance Corporation, a World Bank Group member as part of the International Finance Corporation, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Women in Work program. The government of Sri Lanka supported a multi-stakeholder initiative to design this strategy. The new plan emphasizes Sri Lanka's progress in expanding access to financial services as well as areas where work has to be done to ensure full financial inclusion and utilization. The National Financial Inclusion Strategy represents our country's commitment to making Sri Lanka a better and more inclusive place for all individuals and businesses. More crucially, by identifying financial literacy as a critical component, this policy emphasizes future generations. The plan to improve the national curriculum in this area is a step in the right direction. Investing in our younger generation's education is the most important investment we can make as a country, as it will be a particularly beneficial approach to the systematic correction of Sri Lankan financial habits. The strategies to improve financial inclusion among women. Before find out the strategies to improve financial inclusion, it is better to identify the barriers which lead to financial exclusion among women. Financial services to the most vulnerable members of society are affected by demand and supply side limitations. Access exclusion, pension exclusion, pricing exclusion, marketing exclusion and self-exclusion are all impediments to financial inclusion. These barriers can be categorized as demand side barriers, supply side barriers and legal and regulatory barriers. Under the demand side barriers to financial inclusion includes lack of awareness of financial system, low income and assets, social exclusion and literacy, lack of bargaining power within the household, concentration in lower paying economic activities, competing demands on women's time related to domestic which they are not paid, lack of assets for collateral, lack of formal identification, reduced mobility due to time restriction or social norms, and women have lower rates of cell phone ownership which is required to use many digital products. Under the supply side barriers to financial inclusion includes distance from branch timings, burdensome documentation and procedures, inadequate items, language and employee attitudes. Furthermore, banking institutions know your customer policies provide valuable identity and address evidence to a segment of the population that would otherwise be looking for some type of identity. The main issues that the excluded population faces are lack of access to the formal system, a lack of understanding of how the financial system works, a lack of information about the various products and services, a lack of selection of the appropriate instruments and services that are best suited for them, and a lack of gender-specific policies and practices for product design and marketing. Financial exclusion is a barrier to unleashing the wealth at the bottom of pyramid because of the total quantity and number of the excluded population. Legal and regulatory barriers are account opening restrictions that disadvantage women, difficulties to getting formal identity, legal barriers to owning and inheriting property and other collateral, and a lack of gender-inclusive credit reporting system. Although the demand and supply side challenges to women's financial inclusion are numerous, as it demonstrates how suitable product design features can assist in overcoming some of these barriers. Women's access to financial products as well as the influence of those products on women's ability to make investments and smooth consumption in the face of income shocks may benefit from design changes that take into consideration their individual requirements and preferences. Women products that provide women more control and privacy over their income and spending decisions seem to hold the most promise. Researchers should continue to investigate the role of gender norms and the intra-household bargaining power in women's economic empowerment, as well as test new products and programs that directly address women's preference and concerns. Sri Lanka disclosed first national financial inclusion strategy. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka, with support from the Finance Corporation, has unveiled a financial inclusion strategy aimed at making financial services more accessible, efficient and affordable for all households and business in the country, enhance access to digital finance and payments, increase access to credit for micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, protect financial consumers and improve financial literacy among consumers, particularly women. Titled Better Quality Inclusion for Better Life, this is Sri Lanka's first comprehensive attempt to facilitate more accessible, effective, efficient and affordable financial services in a way that responds to the needs of every individual and enterprise in the country. The National Financial Inclusion Strategy symbolizes our country's commitment towards a better and inclusive Sri Lanka that will benefit all individuals and enterprises. The concept of inclusive finance is a central part of most government initiatives aimed towards supporting the efforts of individuals and entities to work themselves out of poverty and formally participate in the economy. Although financial inclusion alone cannot alleviate poverty, it can help to build better life. For financially excluded populations, accessing and using financial services and products to help them plan ahead and manage their finances is crucial to opening up opportunities and improving their standard of living. While efforts have been made to improve the country's financial inclusion in the past, with initiatives such as loans being provided to farming communities through cooperative societies as far back as the early 20th century, most of them were uncoordinated at the national level and their contributions towards achieving financial inclusion goals have been limited. This can be seen in the National Financial Survey done in 2018-19, which showcased that achieving an acceptable level of financial inclusion remains a challenge in Sri Lanka. Moreover, it also stated that this in financial inclusion has forced the most vulnerable communities to resort to the informal finance sector, exposing them to risk and making them more susceptible to poverty. Therefore, financial inclusion is observed as vital policy tool in Sri Lanka's development agenda. This survey acted as the basis to the National Financial Inclusion Strategy, which took a gender-sensitive approach and assisted to recognize the present position of the financial inclusion. It also revealed that both men and women suffer from a lack of financial literacy, particularly when it comes to digital financial services. The strategy to improve financial inclusion in Sri Lanka centers around 4 pillars of digital finance and payments, micro, small, medium enterprises finance, consumer protection, and financial literacy and capacity building. There are 4 pillars. The first pillar is digital finance and payments. It is to provide affordable and easily accessible financial products to underserved consumers. This can be done via several levers such as diversifying and facilitating access points, expanding available payment instruments, enabling the fintech ecosystem, achieving scale through digital social transfers, and generating demand for digital means of payments. The second pillar is micro, small, medium enterprise finance. This one is assist the formal financial sector to scale up micro, small, medium enterprise lending and expand the range of high quality products with a specific focus on green and sustainable finance as well as vulnerable groups. This pillar also includes market friendly policy approaches to increase government assisted micro, small, medium enterprise finance support programs. Supporting the growth of micro, small, medium enterprises is a priority for the national policy agenda as they represent over 90% of businesses, employ around 3 million people and are a major contributor to employment and Sri Lanka's economic growth. However, they face numerous obstacles including difficulty in accessing appropriate affordable financial products and services. The third pillar is consumer protection. This consumer protection will aim to clarify and strengthen the legal mandate of financial sector authorities for financial consumer protection regulation and oversight. It will also ensure legal requirements covering disclosure and transparency, fair treatment and business conduct, and internal dispute resolution applies to all providers of financial products. Other goals of this pillar will include expanding on specialized financial consumer protection supervisory activities and enhancing external dispute resolution mechanisms to provide financial consumers with accessible, affordable, independent, well-resourced, fair, accountable, timely and efficient channels for dispute resolution. The final pillar, financial literacy and capacity building. This capacity building is there to assess the population's level of financial literacy and identify key gaps, improve the coordination of financial literacy efforts, increase financial literacy among consumers, increase the capacity of micro, small, medium enterprises on the attributes required to gain access to the formal financial system and improve the effectiveness and efficiency of delivery channels for financial literacy. The National Financial Inclusion Strategy 2021-24 also provides a standardized and coordinated approach including an action plan for all stakeholders to improve financial inclusion in Sri Lanka. Moreover, the strategy sets out how its objectives can be achieved in a timely manner while also encouraging existing and new parties to create new initiatives to improve financial inclusion. The last one, conclusion. According to recent researchers, those with greater levels of financial education have greatly raised the value of their savings and choosing investment options with higher rates of return, and it has a significant impact on family wealth and well-being. It adds that financial inclusion of a major section of the population is a slow-moving process, which is why the society's financial habits are framed in informality, and the benefits that come with using this financial system are not utilized by a huge proportion of the people. Although many actors are involved in the development of programs aimed at enhancing people's financial literacy, procedures must be managed, preferably by governments who are directly responsible for and recipients of the advantages that these programs can offer. It is essential to conduct monitoring and determine the relevance of various programs. There is a commitment to achieve that at least 1 billion people who are not now part of the official financial system have at least one account as one of the targets to be met. Allow the offer of electronic mode and mobile cash products. Allow non-bank actors to enter the market in order to add dynamism, innovation and delivery mechanisms at the cheap cost. Make it clear that network of agents can be used to broaden the scope of financial service providers while also assisting them in delivering products and services at cheaper cost. Rather than paying cash, move large figure flows into accounts such as social benefits and salary, asserting that new customers are well informed about their financial services and are safeguarded from market manipulation. For electronic currency transfers, there should also be convergence between the regulated banks, telecom firms, software companies and phone manufacturers. Financial literacy and credit counseling programs can help to build a critical mass of people who use financial services, making financial inclusion a reality. One of the solutions for reaching the public in a country is to introduce an electronic payment system. National Financial Inclusion Strategy 2021-24 identifies 3 core enablers: the formation of broad and rigorous data set mechanisms, enhancing and growing financial infrastructure in the country, and developing policy tools and an enabling regulatory environment. In the Sri Lankan context, women play a vital role in a family by engaging in many jobs covering almost all the sectors of the economy. Therefore, the role of women is crucial in the process of empowering individual households and ultimately achieving the national objective of prosperity of the country. Hence, there is a crucial need for economic empowering through enhancing the level of the financial literacy. It will help women to manage their incomes and contribute to the society. Moreover, financial institutions must develop specific financial products and services to cater to women's needs. Thank you. I would like to thank to give this opportunity to our respected Vice Chancellor and Dean of the Faculty of Management Studies and Academic Public Affairs branch, and also the audience who presented here for this memorial lecture of Dr. Arunachalam Somasundaram Pillai. Thank you. Good luck.
On behalf of our university, we are thanking our guest speaker, Professor R. Jodindra Raja, for delivering a good memorial oration in the title of Role of Financial Literacy in Achieving Women's Financial Inclusion and the Strategies to Improve Financial Inclusion Among Women. Thank you, Madam. Now, the time for giving vote of thanks. I kindly call upon Professor B. Vimaladasan, Dean, Faculty of Management Service and Commerce, to deliver the vote of thanks.
We, Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce, University of Jaffna, honored and commemorate late Dr. Arunachalam Somasundaram Pillai, who was a chartered accountant and former council member of the University of Jaffna, who contribute a lot in the field of accounting and finance. First of all, it's my duty and record to our most Vice Chancellor for his guidance and direction to conduct this memorial lectures, and also I thank for delivering his introductory speech on these memorial lectures. And we are very grateful to Professor Radharani Jogindra Raja Madam for agreeing to deliver the memorial lectures late Dr. A. Somasundaram Pillai for the year 2022 on the title of Role of Financial Literacy in the Achieving Women's Financial Inclusions and the Strategies to Improve the Financial Inclusions Among Women. And also I really thank Mr. T. Prabhakaran, Assistant Registrar, Academic Affairs and Publication Branch, and his team for organizing these memorial lectures. And also I really thank all former Vice Chancellors, Deans of the Faculties, former Deans of the Faculties, Head of the Department, Professors, Academic Staff, Academic Support Staff, and VC Media and students for participating in these memorial lectures in the name of late Dr. A. Somasundaram Pillai. And I wanted to express my views in these memorial lectures, because we are with the Faculty of Management Studies. We are conducting these memorial lectures after maybe 8 years. Unfortunately, we have scheduled last year. We couldn't able to make it as per the schedule. Hopefully, I promise that it will be continued in the name of late Dr. Arunachalam Somasundaram Pillai every year on 5th of May. Thank you very much, everyone. God bless you.